So lately on the channel, game leaks has been a very hot topic. Of course, 2 days ago, there was a massive Capcom data breach in which a bunch of stuff was discovered, including new games for the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation lineup of systems, and the Xbox lineup of systems. Now, we didn't talk too much about them. We really just sort of focused on the Great Attorney series coming to the Nintendo Switch and finally being localized. Of course, these games originally released on the 3DS in Japan, but were never localized and brought over. But since then, there has been more information from this Capcom leak, and it looks like the next 4 or so years of Capcom's games have been revealed. Now, this is coming to us from that same sort of data leak. There was an official Japanese document that a lot of people are citing as actual stuff here, you know, factual information. It's a very professional document. There's lots of details on the document, and I basically just want to go over what games are being talked about in this leak because there's some very interesting stuff. You can see here, we are taking a look at pushsquare.com. I will have a link to their website in the description box down below so that you can check out their article on it. But yes, as the title says, rumor, massive Capcom leak reveals Dragon Dogma 2, Street Fighter 6, new Monster Hunter, Onimusha, and more. So this is pretty much supposedly a roadmap for what Capcom is going to do within the next 4 or so years. And there's a lot of heavy hitter games, a lot of franchises that we thought Capcom had completely forgotten about. But there's one thing on here that kind of raises a red flag for me when it comes to this being an actual thing, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So as we can see, this information is part of the ransomware attack that Capcom unfortunately went through. Basically, people hacked into Capcom's database and stole this information. Definitely scummy, definitely, you know, illegal stuff as well, but it is what it is, so we might as well talk about it. So according to the leak, this is Capcom's outline for 2021 to 2024. Resident Evil Outrage, which I don't know anything about that. I sort of avoided the Resident Evil related stuff in that initial Capcom leak because I want to be surprised with Resident Evil 8. This might be the sort of online game that I've heard rumors about. You know, supposedly they might be doing some sort of free-for-all style game, like a Fortnite style game with Resident Evil, which I think would be absolutely bizarre, but you know, it is what it is. Now, Dragon Dogma 2 is a Q2 2022 game. Now, Dragon's Dogma was actually a really good game. It released on a plethora of systems. You could pretty much pick it up on everything from the Xbox 360 to the Nintendo Switch. I actually really like this game. If you like games like Skyrim, you're gonna have a really fun time with this game. I feel like the combat is actually a little bit more refined than in Skyrim because it's based more on like melee attacks and magic attacks and whatnot, but a really fun open world style game. Street Fighter 6 is supposedly coming in Q3 of 2022. Of course, Street Fighter 5 launched as a PlayStation 4 console exclusive game. Definitely was very limited on content when it initially came out, but over time, it definitely got a lot better. They added in a bunch of new characters and whatnot to make the game feel more fleshed out. You can only rehash old Street Fighter games every so often. I think the 30th Anniversary Collection was a great compilation of Street Fighter games, but you got to come out with that new sometimes as well. Rockman, Mega Man in English Match, Q3 2022. To me, that sort of sounds like a puzzle game involving Rockman, or Mega Man as he's known in the United States, so whatever. Resident Evil 4 Remake is supposedly being a Q4 2022 game. Now, what's weird about this is I don't think Resident Evil 4 needs a remake. Like, I know that's going to be somewhat of a controversial opinion, but I think if any Resident Evil game needs a remake, it's Resident Evil Code Veronica. Like, the story is canon, the game itself is awesome, but that gameplay is that old style of Resident Evil gameplay. Like, that's why they redid Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, because of things like tank controls, and they're definitely very prevalent in Resident Evil Code Veronica, whereas Resident Evil 4 plays like a modern game in my opinion. So I'm not quite sure why this even needs to be done. Obviously, Resident Evil 4 was very successful, so I do get it from a business standpoint, but from a consumer standpoint, I would much rather see Resident Evil Code Veronica. Onimusha, new work, Q4 2022. Obviously, Onimusha did get a HD remaster of the original game on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. Awesome game. If you've never played Onimusha, it's kind of like Resident Evil with like samurai swords, sort of that older style of Resident Evil gameplay, but I really enjoyed it. Kind of like Devil May Cry. You know how Devil May Cry was essentially like a Resident Evil style game, but like with guns? It's kind of like that with instead it has samurai weapons in it. So if you've never played the original Onimusha, definitely check it out. So curious to see what that's about. Monster Hunter 6, Q2 2023. Obviously, Monster Hunter has been a huge franchise for Capcom as of late with games like Monster Hunter World and, of course, Monster Hunter Rise coming out on the Nintendo Switch in March of 2021. Biohazard Apocalypse, Q3 2023. Some sort of Resident Evil game, obviously, with that. Biohazard is known as Resident Evil in Japan. Super Street Fighter 6, Q4 2023. So not only are you planning on Street Fighter 6, but you're planning the Super version already because you're going to add in more characters and stuff. I hate that. I hate that. Final Fight Remake, which that would be very interesting. Q2 of 2024. What could you really do with Final Fight? If it's a remake of the original game, would it be sort of like a Streets of Rage 4 style game? You know, Final Fight was a very popular series back in its heyday, but obviously we haven't seen a new entry in it in quite a while. What was the last one? Final Fight Streetwise or something like that, which really wasn't a Final Fight game to begin with. Now, of course, this was included in the Capcom Beat 'em Up collection, the original version of Final Fight, which people absolutely love. It's a very fun beat 'em up game, right up there with Streets of Rage in my opinion. So I don't know how you would do a remake with that. And the next remake we have is Power Stone Remake in Q3 of 2024. Now, Power Stone was a very popular franchise and on the Sega Dreamcast. People absolutely loved sort of the more open style of gameplay. It was almost like a beat 'em up and a fighter mixed together. So I think that would be honestly really cool to see Power Stone come back. We haven't seen it since the Power Stone Collection, which I believe came out on the PlayStation Portable. But yeah, since then we haven't seen any sort of Power Stone stuff. So I definitely would be on board with that. Ultra Street Fighter 6. Like, how many Ultra Street Fighters, Super Street Fighters? Like, come on, man. If you know a Street Fighter is coming, just try to make it as good as possible. But Ultra Street Fighter 6, Q4 of 2024. And Resident Evil Hank. I'm guessing that's Resident Evil starring Hank Hill from King of the Hill, Q4 of 2024. Obviously, some of these titles, you just sort of have to speculate and guess what they are as far as the name is concerned. You know, there's a Mega Man game on here, but is it a puzzle game? Because I think people want a traditional Mega Man game. Obviously, Mega Man 11 sold very well for Capcom. I believe at last report, it's sold over 1.5 million across all the systems. I'm sure a lot of those were on the Nintendo Switch as well. Like Resident Evil Hank, what are we doing with that here? But like I said at the start of this video, I do have a question about this, and there's something that's very glaring that you probably noticed, but maybe you didn't, so I'm going to point it out when it comes to this list. Looking at this list, we have Resident Evil Outrage, we have Resident Evil Hank, we have Resident Evil 4 Remake, but then we have Biohazard Apocalypse. Now, like I said, Resident Evil is known in Japan as Biohazard, and if this is a Japanese document, wouldn't all of the games in the Resident Evil franchise be under the Biohazard tag? Why would one game have the Biohazard tag, but the other three do not? And that's what's really weird to me. So is Biohazard Apocalypse maybe a Japan-only exclusive game? Which that wouldn't make sense either, because Resident Evil, the franchise, is very, very popular. What about the Q1 and Q2 2021 games? Why would those be omitted off of this list as well? Games like Resident Evil 8 and Monster Hunter Rise and Monster Hunter Stories, or Monster Hunter Stories 2, which of course is a Q2 2021 game. So it seems kind of weird to me, and a lot of people are running with this as complete fact, that this is an actual leak coming to us from Capcom. It is what we are going to be getting, and this is the roadmap for Capcom in the future. But I definitely have my doubts because of the things like the fact that there's no sort of Q1 and Q2 2021 games on this list, and the fact that Resident Evil goes from Resident Evil to Biohazard, which doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. But if this is real, very exciting stuff. Obviously, Capcom has been on a roll. Capcom is a company that I love to hate. Like, I love their games, but I hate sort of their business philosophy when it comes to releasing games. And obviously, a lot of these games will be coming to the Nintendo Switch, the PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series X. There's a potential for these games to also come to the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One as well. I think a game like Dragon's Dogma 2 could be a big multi-platform release, because that's a game that's obviously been in development for quite a while. The original Dragon's Dogma came out many, many years ago, over a decade ago, I believe. So I would think that that game would be something that has been worked on for quite a while because of the size and the scope of the game. But this supposedly is Capcom's roadmap for 2021 and beyond. If this is true, they're going to have a very fruitful season. There's going to be a lot of bangers coming out of here, so I'm excited for it, but I'm definitely hesitant to call this an actual fact because of the weird stuff that's going on with this leak. But let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this. Does this sound more like a pipe dream of just games that you would want to see from Capcom, or do you think that this is the real deal? And as always, guys, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Check out other videos on the channel as well, and as always, I will catch you guys on the next video. Enjoy your day. Later.